Welcome to My Mormon Memory. This is JP talking here, talking into the microphone for another episode. In the previous episode, I started working at a real estate pyramid scheme company that was really terrible. If you want to listen to that, go back. I recommend going back and listen to the whole entire podcast first if this is the first time you're listening. Anyway, let's get to business. In this episode, I'm going to talk about the last couple of months working for this MLM that I worked for in Utah Valley. Utah Valley has a lot of MLMs, multi-level marketing companies, or Mormons losing money, I guess is another phrase you can say about what an MLM is. But they're very common in Utah. If you look them up, if you look MLM up on Wikipedia, there's actually a category for Utah alone. There's a lot of them in Utah. A lot of pyramid schemes, a lot of like Ponzi scheme kind of stuff. And I'm not really an expert in business and stuff, but even I can call like something was seriously wrong with these people. And this was my experience. In the last episode, I started talking about the first part, and this is going to be the last part of this experience working for these people. And so what was happening at the time, the company was growing like crazy. I mentioned in the last episode how every single Monday morning they'd get up and show how many numbers, how many millions they were making, and how everyone should clap their hands and high five each other. A very cult-like, very corporate cult-like thing. It was one of the things in the Bite motto about cults is that it's all about can't question the leaders. It's all about energetic, all about driven by emotion and stuff like that. Leader worship. That's what this was. It felt really much like everybody was kind of deceived by this scam. But yet we weren't getting paid very much. We didn't get like any royalties or anything. They were making millions of dollars, and everybody in the company was hardly making it. They weren't making like a ton of money. And I felt like the whole company favored its salespeople more than the rest of everyone else. And so what happened was this company was growing like crazy. I got in about the time the company started to explode, and the company decided to change its name. They rebranded. I was working for one part of the company, and the company ended up being a multi-company corporation. It had the name, and it rhymes with the word fudge. I don't know if I can say the actual name. I know the company isn't around anymore because they got sued by the federal government, and they're not around anymore. But for a while in 2014, 2015, it was kind of everywhere and nowhere. It was kind of like that song by Godier. You used to hear that song on the radio all the time. Now it's not there anymore. It was kind of like this company. It was everywhere, and now it's nowhere to be found. It's gone. No one knows where it went. And so this company became, it had a new logo and stuff, and it was like, we are now this company. And it had a bunch of companies underneath. It had a lawyer firm. It had a mortgage company, and then it had the real estate company that I was under, which originally hired me. They were sponsored by BYU, BYU football. And I still remember going to this football game. It was the whiteout game against Virginia. It was in 2014, I think. And I went to this game, and I'm not a BYU fan. I'm a Utah man. I'm a Utah fan. I'm not a diehard BYU fan. I do support BYU if they're not playing Utah, but I went to this game with my wife and kids, and it was the Virginia game where I think Taysom Hill was their quarterback, and I remember going to this game where I think BYU won this game, and they're nationally ranked, and there was a lot of hype in Cougar Town. Bring on Alabama, we're gonna beat Bama. Like it was on national TV, it was on ESPN, and we were in the nosebleed section, and everyone in the stadium was wearing white, and it had the logo of my company, the company that I was working for, that branded, that rhymed with fudge. You can look it up. You'll probably find it. I don't know if the company isn't around anymore, but I don't want to be a dick. I don't want to say the name of the company. I don't like doxing people on here, but it rhymes with the word fudge, the mother of all swear words. And it had a BYU. It was like a camo BYU, the BYU oval Y logo on the front. It was like camo, and then on the back it had the logo of the company that I was working for. And it was sponsored at this game, and there was, it was on the radio on the way there. I heard it on the radio on the way, and it was on the sidelines. I had the company name on the sidelines. You can watch highlights from this game. It was the Virginia BYU game in 2014. You can see on the sidelines. You can see the company logo on the side. And I remember going to this game, and it was like 100 degrees outside, and we didn't stay the entire time because, for one, I'm not a BYU sports fan, all right? I'm like, whatever, it's my company. This is cool. My company is everywhere here at this BYU nationally televised game. And this company was out there kicking ass and taking names. They're going to be the next Vivint or Qualtrics. And this company has taken over Utah Valley. We're the next big thing. And they're all like, I remember they're talking all kinds of shit on the Monday following the game. They're just like, yeah, we made it on ESPN. There's the part in the game where it showed, BYU scores a touchdown. You had these military guys doing push-ups after every touchdown, and they're wearing these shirts, and one of the ESPN announcers was just like, oh, and they made a comment about the the shirt and the logo and the company name, and they're just like, oh, we were on ESPN, and just, they're just like, yeah, high five, And this company was growing like crazy, and it was unstoppable. And then at the same time, we're just like, we're buying a brand new, huge office complex in Linden. We're buying a massive office building in Linden, right by the Home Depot in Linden, if you're familiar with the area. I still drive past this building once a week, and it drives me crazy. They're not there anymore, which I'll explain later. But yeah, that's what happened. And it was crazy. They were growing so fast. And eventually we moved into this huge office building, and it was a massive building. And it had the name of the logo, the name of the company up front. It doesn't anymore. And it was just like legit. Like, I was so proud of this company. I'm like, this is my company I'm working for. I'm finally at a company that's actually awesome. And they'd always talk about how they do good in the community, and they do like charitable stuff, help people out and stuff, kind of hide the truth, because that's what a lot of coats do. That they kind of hide the truth. They try to overcompensate and be like, we're good people, we do humanitarian stuff, but we cover up the truth, what really goes on behind the curtains. That's what this company would boast about. And at the same time, I remember like I was excited to go to the new office building, and this company was just going crazy. It was just growing like crazy, and they the names different, and this was kind of the golden age of this company, I felt like. And I remember we had a general authority show up. It was Elder Durant, and he was an NBA player back in the day. He was drafted in '84 with Michael Jordan and all those great players, and in the '84 NBA draft, and he was probably drafted in the second round, I don't know, but he was from BYU. He played at BYU in the '80s, and then he played in the NBA for like 2 seasons, I don't know. He wasn't really good, but they invited him over to this company. He like talked to us, and he's a general authority. He's a 70, but I was so excited to have a general authority show up to my work. I mean, this should have been a red flag right here. It's Elder Durant. Okay, look him up. And what he did after this in 2014, or actually this was 2015. I'm going to explain it in a minute. He shows up and he's just wearing a business suit, and it was all about business. It was all about money. It was nothing to do with church or, that he was a general authority. He was all like, I'm rich and look how much he like mentioned how I don't think I believe him here, but he's like, I've made more money outside of the NBA than other NBA players. And he would just talk about money. And he gave us all a very clean, crisp dollar bill. He's like, here you go, money for everybody. And he was just all about money, and he was kind of full of himself. He was really not really humble. He was just kind of full of himself. I feel bad saying this because I said the name of the person, but I mean, he was a nice guy, but he was a business guy, and that was kind of a red flag. I'm like, this guy's a general authority. He's pretty high up in Mormon leadership, and he's going to give a general conference talk in the next session in a couple of weeks, and he's talking about money and how we should invest, and money, and talking at my company that's doing some bad things, and that was a red flag. And then this same guy, Elder Durant, and he gave a talk a couple of weeks later, and it's the infamous Ponderize talk. Now, you guys can look this up too. This guy gave a talk in general conference a couple of weeks later, talks about, he came up with a phrase called ponderize, and it was just like, ponderize the scriptures, ponderize this, ponderize that. Every day we need to ponderize Christ in our lives, or whatever it was. I don't remember. And I remember watching this, and I'm just like, hey, I met that guy at my work. He's such a cool guy. I want to be rich like him someday. And he like gave this talk about ponderizing. I'm like, well, that's kind of cool. Okay, he came up with a new word. That's cool. And then a couple of days later, there's news that his family tried to profit off the word ponderize. They created a web domain. They created a website to sell swag, ponderize t-shirts and mugs, and he was in charge of it. Him and his family, they created all this swag, and they were going to profit off of a general conference talk. I'm just like, holy crap. And that was a red flag. I'm like, really? And that kind of pissed me off. I'm just like, oh my gosh. And then, yeah, he didn't get in trouble by the church, but he had some pretty bad PR because of that, and he's probably going to be remembered for the rest of the time because of that. And that talk has kind of disappeared. You don't see ponderize anymore in the church. It was kind of a thing for like a few months, and everyone's just like, nah, kind of disappeared. The church kind of swept it under the rug because it was so embarrassing for them. General authorities talking about Christ, but trying to profit off a talk. That's what the guy did. So what happened was, I started noticing, of course, I was surprised to say that I started noticing corruption with this company. I started noticing that there's a lot of favoritism. executives were treated like royalty, kind of like how a lot of cults are. The leaders are worshipped. These people on top, the salespeople, the executives are worshipped. Everyone loves these people. They can't do wrong. They're driving in really fancy, fast cars. And they live in mansions, and they're like, they're in charge of all this stuff and taking a lot of money and making tons of money in the company. And everyone loves them, and they're so funny and they're so cool. And everyone in the company is making hardly any money. We weren't making a lot in this company. And there would be like, I remember one day I went into the break room, and there was a plate of cookies, and they were like pretty good cookies. They had frosting, sprinkles. They looked pretty good, kind of like crumble or something. I don't know. And they're really fancy cookies, and it had a sign, it had a little notepad on it. It said cookies for executives only. And it actually said that. And I still kind of find that funny. That was one day, and I'm just like, oh, okay, that's kind of random. Okay, whatever. And there was a lot of cookies. There was at least 50 cookies. I'm like, okay, we're not allowed to. They're not going to share the cookies with us, people. Come on. That's not nice. Come on. You're not going to share the cookies. Anyway, so this is when things started to unravel. I hate to talk about this story because I consider this probably the worst day of my life. And this is worse than what I mentioned earlier in a previous episode where I had to, I walked home that one day in Salt Lake City because I was really depressed. Previous episode. My wife and I were going to buy a house. We were, I wasn't making a ton of money at this job, but it was my first full-time job in a while, and I was making decent, enough. And my wife and I, the housing market was still kind of low, but it was rising. And my wife and I wanted to buy a house, and we found we found a house in Orem, and it was about 2 minutes away from where the company was. So this was perfect. It was an older house, but I wanted to buy an old house so I can flip it because I was kind of brainwashed by the whole flipping movement. I'm like, I want to buy this house, flip it, get into the whole property investment, and I want to do this. And so we found a house in Orem, pretty close to the freeway exit in Orem, and it was kind of an older house. It was built in the 70s. It was a really kind of rundown house, but I really wanted it. It was like an art project. It was a project. I wanted to buy this house, flip it, a couple of years later, sell it for a high price. And so I was just like, let's buy this house. And my wife was kind of just like, I don't know. And I'm just like, no, let's get into the market. And we were renting, we're tired of renting from landlords, and we wanted our own property. And I had all these ideas for it. I wanted a koi pond in the backyard and a waterfall in the front yard, and make this house look so nice, and make it bigger. And then up, they didn't have a garage, so I wanted to put like an apartment on top to rent it out, and I wanted to get into the whole thing, So my wife and I were about to close on this house, and I told my boss, okay, my wife and I are closing on a house. Am I good? And he would always tell me, you're doing an awesome job. We love you. You're an awesome employee. I didn't make any mistakes. It wasn't like the last job. I didn't make a single mistake in this company. I knew what I was doing, and I did a hell of a good job. I thought I kicked ass in this job. I did some pretty cool websites, and I knew exactly what to do, and I was doing pretty damn good. And I don't like to talk full of myself. I'm not a very cocky guy, but I was kicking ass at this job. I was asking at this point, I'm just like, I demand a promotion, you guys, because I was doing everything right. I made, oh my gosh, I was kicking butt, and I made a few websites for them. I made the website for the new website for the company, and I made a website for a web series that they did where it was a web show where two people were flipping homes and making tons of money, and it was called Big Money or something like that. It's not around anymore. And I did that. I made a website and YouTube channel for them. And this is when I kind of got into YouTube as well, because I was doing their YouTube channel. And so I was closing on a house. Everything was going really good. My wife and I were doing better. I was doing better. I was still doubting the church and kind of depressed about that, but still I was doing better in life, and I felt like I had a purpose, and I was so excited to finally own a house and get into the market there. And I told my boss, hey, is my job security good? I knew it was, but but I told him anyway. He's just like, yeah, man, you're good. You don't have to worry. We got a lot of stuff coming up for you. And so a week later, I kid you not, a week later, one of my bosses is out of town. He was in Chicago or something. And I had my other boss, the one who originally interviewed me first, I kind of had a bad feeling about. He came up to me, patted my shoulder. It's just like, you got a meeting at 3:00. You, and you. To like 6 or 7 people on my team. Meeting at 3:00, boardroom, be there. And he just walks off. And I'm just like, okay, that was random. But then I'm like, oh, I'm okay. This is probably just a new project we're going to all work on together because we're all just web people. And the team has grown a ton, but there's been a lot of people. One thing I also noticed is there was a lot of people coming and leaving in the company. There would be a new person, they would hire a new person, and then that person will leave after 3 days for some weird reason. And that's what would happen. But some people stuck around, and that was us. And I'm just like, and one of these people was the COO's son, the son of the COO. I'm just like, oh yeah, this is obviously we're going to be fine. This is going to be a new project to work on together, you guys. And I was so pumped up and I was so excited. Life was good. And then so we go at 3:00. We went in and we sat there for at least 15 minutes, just the 6 or 7. I think there was about 6 of us. We were looking around on the boardroom, and it was kind of a typical corporate meeting room with windows around it. Kind of reminds me of a fish tank, We're kind of in there and we're just looking around at each other like, okay, what if they firing us? And one person said that, like, what if we're getting fired? And we all just laugh like, yeah, right. First of all, this company's growing like crazy. This company's making millions a week. We're fine. And then we got the COO's son right here, and he's with us. There's no way they're gonna fire him. And we're just all joking about it. And then we're just like, what's taking them so long? And then all of a sudden there's 2 guys walk in. One of them, I didn't even know who he was. And then another guy I kind of worked with a few times. And talked to him a few times. And he came, and they both came in. They kind of had serious looks on their face. And at this point, I kind of had a bad feeling. I'm just like, oh no. Like, where's my boss at? I never saw my manager again. I don't know where he went. It was just these 2 random guys in suits, and they're just like, "Oh, okay. Unfortunately, you guys have done good work, but unfortunately, this is your last day." And I'm just like, "What the fuck?" I was just like, "No way!" And right away, I was pissed because I'm just like, "Hey, I told my manager a week ago that I was closing on a house. We were buying a house. My wife and I were buying a house. He told me, 'You're okay. Don't worry.'" And all of a sudden, he's out of town that day, and I get a call to go to this meeting, and I'm getting fired. Oh, in their words, let go. I love how they always say let go. It's like, it's kind of a nicer way of saying you're being terminated. That's a fun word. Termination. Yeah. Anyway, and they're just like, oh yeah, here's the rest of your paycheck. There's no severance. They're a multi-million-dollar company, but they didn't even give a severance pay or not a bonus or anything. And I've been through this rodeo before. I've gotten laid off at a few jobs, unfortunately. I got laid off during COVID, which I'll talk about later in this podcast if it goes that far. I've gotten laid off, unfortunately, a lot of times because I've worked at a lot of terrible companies. A lot of companies that were unfortunately not doing good, or they were struggling, or they were just bad people on top. But this was really painful because I'm like, hey, my wife and I are closing on a house. And I said that. I interrupted. I'm like, hey, my wife and I are closing on a house. And he's just like, I'm sorry, man. That's just the way it is. Talk to me afterwards if you want, but sorry, tough luck, man. You guys all got the short end of the stick. And it was just very unceremonious, very unsympathetic. And these people, I don't know what the other guy was. I mean, it must have been his job to fire people. I don't know. Can you imagine that? Hey, Dad, what do you do for a living? Oh, I fired someone. Oh, I love you, Dad. You're so amazing. I swear to God, there's people out there that their job is to literally go places and fire people. I don't know. Because I didn't know who this guy was. And it was like the Bobs or something. I don't know. I've never saw this guy before. He showed up. He had a suit and tie. He was the one that gave us the news. I don't know. That was his job description. I go around firing people. It was really weird. I mean, you got to be the biggest sociopath on the planet to yeah, that's what I do for a living. Anyway, so I was pissed. I'm just like, oh my gosh, but I was trying to be professional, They're just like, we want you to leave in a professional manner. Do not touch your computers because we don't want you planting viruses somehow, Like I said, I've been through this rodeo before, and every time they lay you off in an office job, they're just like, don't touch your computer. What if you might damage our property? Like, you guys don't trust me? I've been here a year. You think I'm gonna smash the computer with my fist or something? I'm not gonna do that. Come on, you don't trust me that I don't have I'm not a rageaholic or anything. So then I was just like devastated. It was one of those moments in life where I don't know if you felt this way before, where you feel to yourself, is this really real? Is this happening? Is this like a dream? Is this a bad dream? And the weird thing is, a week earlier, I had a dream that this happened. I had a dream that I went to work and there was an interview and someone said, you're fired. And I'm just like, but I'm closing on a house. Sorry. I had a dream a week earlier and I remember it stressed me out. I'm just like, oh no. And it actually happened. It literally almost exactly word for word happened. And so I got out, and at this point I was pissed off, but I was trying to remain composed professionally, and I was just like, oh, okay, this is it. And I was just so devastated. And I'm like, what am I going to tell my wife? We can't buy her a house. It wasn't a dream house, but it was a dream to own a house, And I started packing. I started doing the walk of shame. Every time you get laid off, it's the most humiliating thing ever. It's the equivalent of getting pantsed as a kid, all right? Getting laid off at a job is the most humiliating thing ever because no one knows why you're getting laid off. Everyone assumes, oh, was he looking at porn? Was he downloaded child pornography? Like, why is he was a good employee. He was here every day. Why is he getting laid off? It must have been something bad he did. There's always assumptions, but you can't say anything. So I show up packing my stuff while everyone else is still working, and they're just like, they didn't say anything. They're just like, oh shit, what the hell? Half the team is leaving. What? Everyone, it was just kind of funny. It was kind of sad to look back, funny and sad to look back on what it would be like to be the person actually still have a job. And they're just like, oh my gosh, 7 people are just packing up their desks simultaneously and leaving. Oh my gosh, what's going on? I bet that's terrifying for the people that still work there. So I start packing my stuff, and this is when I really lost my temper, because this guy shows up, this HR guy, and no one really liked this guy. He was kind of a jerk. Yeah, his name was Doug. I didn't really care much for this guy, and he like stood right behind me, and he just had his arms folded, and he was just like, "Are you done yet?" And he was just so unsympathetic. He was just like, are you done yet? Hurry up. You got to pack your stuff right now and get out. And he was just like, he didn't say anything. I'm so sorry this happened to you, man. Like there was an IT guy, a big intimidating IT guy who had like a big beard. He was a huge guy. He looked like a biker gang kind of guy. He came up to me afterwards just like, man, I'm sorry, man. You were an awesome employee. Don't let this get to you. You're just keep on trucking. He was a cool guy. But this guy, this HR douchebag, he was behind me, and he to be honest with you, I'm not a fan of HR, to be honest with you, because of this guy. But he was just voting. If anyone who's listening on is HR, forgive me. Anyway, so this guy was he was doing the wrong thing. He was just standing there with his arms folded. He's just like, hurry up, what's taking so long? And I yelled at him. I turned around and be like, I said back off. I told him to back off, and he was just like, oh, now you're burning bridges, huh? And this is what he said. And I'm sure any of you listening right now are just like, oh, blood's boiling. Like if this would happen to you, you would be tempted to do the same thing. And I didn't want to lose my temper and act not professional, because I don't want to be a dick when they fire me. I was pissed because I told them specifically, my wife and I were closing on a house and they were firing me, and somehow I got the short end of the stick. I couldn't believe it. I'm just like, really? And my boss wasn't there. And the last time I saw my other manager, he just patted me on the back and told me, hey, he didn't even say anything like, oh, by the way, thanks, we love having you. You were an awesome employee. He didn't even say that. He's just like, oh yeah, meeting at 3. And then he disappeared. I was so betrayed. I thought these people were my friends, these managers that I had that weren't there. And I felt so betrayed by these people. And I never heard back from them again. They never reached out to me and be like, hey, sorry, man, about what happened. Because I imagine they're not there anymore, because the company eventually got sued by the federal government and does not exist anymore. And this is what they're laying us off for, because they got busted and we were collateral damage. And that's what really made me upset. And I was so mad. And I remember I told the guy to back off, the HR guy. I'm like, back off. And it was kind of like I mentioned in the previous episode about the bus driver incident. I kind of lost my cool, and I wish I didn't do it. But it was one of the most few moments in my life where I wanted to be an asshole really bad, because this guy was a mega asshole. He could have just been like, oh, I'm so sorry that this happened, man, but clean up your desk and good luck, shake my hand, But he was just folding his arms like, get out. Oh, it made me so mad. I'm still mad about this. Yeah, I'm still salty about this. I hold grudges, okay? I'm a human being. So anyway, I leave and I have my box of shame. I'm doing the walk of shame in my little box that you see in the movies where people get fired, and I'm still traumatized by this kind of stuff. I hate getting laid off. Sucks. And I get in the car, and then I call my wife in the cell phone, and I'm kind of in tears. Like I said, I don't cry very much, and I'm just having a mental breakdown. Like, what now? I don't trust anyone. I don't even want a job anymore, because this sucks. Like, I work at this company. The company's making tons of money. I help them make tons of money, and then I'm collateral damage for some reason. And then back then, I didn't know why I was getting fired. I didn't know they were getting sued by the government. I didn't know until a year later the company got shut down and sued by the government, and all those jerks lost their jobs. Thank God. And it made the news and everything, and I was dancing on their grave, I was so happy. And I didn't know then. I just thought they just ripped my heart out of my chest, and for some reason they just fired me. And I did not know the company was struggling anyway. They were making so much money, and they just bought a huge office building like a month earlier, and they were doing so good. And all of a sudden I get canned, and I'm just like, what is going on? I was so confused, and I'm just like, why, God? Why me? Is this because I'm doubting the church? And I started thinking, oh, it's bad to doubt the church now, because bad things are happening for me, because that's what they always tell you. If you doubt the church, bad things happen. And I started thinking about that. I'm just like, oh no. And so I was I called my wife and I was in tears, and I'm just like, what? We're not going to get the house now. These bastards fired me right when I was about to buy the house. And my wife, she did a good job calming me down. And I remember coming home that night. Oh, it wasn't that night. It was like 3:00 on a Friday, if I remember. I got home a little early and I was so pissed off, and I called my brother I called my brother out, and I took a long walk around the block in the neighborhood, and I was swearing like crazy. And I used to not swear a lot. I swear a lot now, but I used to never swear. I was dropping F-bombs and stuff like, fuck, and my brother's like, that sucks, man. And then my wife's like, we're going to be fine. Okay. I still have a job, and we're still renting. We're just not going to buy the house. I had a bad feeling about the house anyway. My wife's a very half the glass is half full kind of person, but I was just so devastated. I'm just like, God, why me? Why does this keep happening? Why can't I just have a good career, and why did I get suckered into this terrible company? And so it's ironically happened the same afternoon where I asked for a raise. I sent them an email, and then an hour later I get fired. I kind of thought that was kind of ironic. I asked for a raise the same time I get called in. Maybe that's why, I don't know. I need a raise. Oh, you're fired. Anyway, so it sucked. And then eventually my wife's like, took us out. We went out to dinner that night. I think it was Chubby's in Pleasant Grove. It's still there. Pretty good place. I still go there regularly. And we went there and, eat lots of good unhealthy food and feel better. And then later that night I felt a lot better, but it was still probably one of the worst days of my life, if not the worst day of my life. I felt like absolute shit. Couldn't get the house, and I was so betrayed by my friends at work, and I felt like they were my buddies, and then all of a sudden it's kind of like what happened at the church job, the previous job. I'm just like, I can't trust another human being anymore. I am messed up. I am broken. People find me broken, and they take advantage of me, and they do everything they can, and they take what they want, and they leave me in the dust. That's what it felt like. And it's, oh my God, it was so hard. I had to go to see a therapist at this point because I was so devastated by this. And my wife's just like, it's going to be okay. It's summertime. Maybe we'll go on a trip. We'll visit my dad in Oregon. And that's what we plan to do. We still have lots of money in the bank. We're going to be fine. You're going to find another job in a few months. It's going to work out. And at the same time, at the same exact day, I had a YouTube channel that I started YouTube a month earlier. It started to grow the same day I got laid off. And I thought that was a sign from God. He closed the door and opened a window. So at that point, I was positive about that. But at the same time, I was so hurt and betrayed. So that was that was hard to talk about. So that was the end of that chapter. I worked for a multi-level marketing real estate scam company that eventually got sued by the federal government. I eventually met another lady who worked in the sales team a couple of years ago, and she's like, yeah, I went completely under, and it was horrible. I dealt with so much negative complaints from people about how corrupt they were and how they lost everything, and I had to put up with all the anger that this company ruined people's lives. And I always felt like that ruined my life, but I'm not going to let it ruin my life. But it ruined so many others, and that's what I'm so mad about even today, that company ruined so many people's lives for the sake of the almighty dollar. And I hope to God that a lot of those people learned a lesson. I doubt it, but they learned a lesson not to do that kind of stuff. Make money, but don't make money by taking from people like that. It's just wrong. And then everyone else is collateral damage, and that's just messed up. Believe me, I was so happy when I found out those guys got sued by the federal government a couple of years later. It was probably during the same time when they laid me off, because the whole thing went under. The whole real estate seminars went under, and that's right when they fired me. But anyway, that was today's episode. It's hard to talk about that. It was extremely difficult, but it's one of the worst things that ever happened to me. And believe me, something is coming up in the next episode that was even kind of probably worse than what I just experienced. And this is the point where I start to have a meltdown, where I start to question God's existence and the whole meaning of life, and I start to reconstruct everything that I was ever taught as a Mormon growing up. And so join me in that next episode, because it's going to be a real interesting one. This was JP talking on My Mormon Memory. Join me in the next episode. Thanks for listening. Bye.